Hi, this is Bob Wells here, and welcome to Undercurrent Stories. This is the show where we hear about people's interests and uncover some fascinating stories at the same time. I hope you enjoy today's show. Hello and welcome to Undercurrent Stories. In today's show, I'm delighted to be joined by Eric Bell. Eric is best known as the original guitarist and founding member of Thin Lizzy. More recently, Eric has published his autobiography titled Remembering. Hello and welcome to the show, Eric.
Thank you very much, Bob.
Great to have you on. Thanks ever so much for coming on.
Thank you.
So, you're gigging again now?
Yes, I've been trying out lots of musicians, and eventually got three guys that are into what I'm doing. So I formed the Eric Bell Trio, it's called, because sometimes it was called the Eric Bell Band. Some people have this preconceived idea there's going to be a twin guitar lineup, so calling it the Eric Bell Trio that sort of changes that, you know.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was the trio that I saw many years ago, which was very good.
Yeah. There's been trios and more trios, and this year, sort of the original trio that I would call it sort of broke up, and I thought, what'll I do now? So rather than just sitting around doing nothing, I started getting in touch with various musicians and trying them out. So I've got a trio at the moment.
That's excellent. And I see you've got a gig in London at the Half Moon coming up.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening with that tour at the moment. Some gigs are still to be confirmed, so I should know about that in a week or so. Before
we talk about your musical career, Eric, can you please tell us about your journey and how you came into the music industry?
Yeah, I suppose it was like a lot of guys that's around my age. A lot of them mentions Lonnie Donegan. Everybody mentions Lonnie Donegan. Eric Clapton, Pete Townsend, Keith Richard, Van Morrison. They were all influenced by Lonnie, and I was as well, definitely. It's the first thing I ever heard on the radio that just woke me up. And I got his records and I started listening to him. And then, of course, the Shadows came along. And for like budding guitar players like myself, they changed the face of the planet for a while. I mean, a lot of people seem to be embarrassed about liking the Shadows. I'm certainly not. I think Hank Marvin was the first true guitar hero in Britain. So that got me into the music, and I joined these little groups. It was in school. I was going to school at the time, and I found out there were some guys who had a little band together. So I asked them one night, could I come up and listen to them, and they let me come up. And that was a real change in my life, seeing little amplifiers on top of a carpet and a little drum kit, and these guys playing Shadows numbers and the Ventures and all these instrumentals, and I just went, right, I want to be part of this.
Yeah. And what was your first guitar? Seeing as it's Hank Marvin, was it a Fender Stratocaster?
Not at all, no.
Oh, right.
That was a King's Ransom to buy one of them.
Yeah.
I did a paper round because I saw this acoustic guitar hanging up in a window in Belfast. Had a fabulous market in those days called Smithfield, and they sold and bought everything. And I was walking down there one day and I saw this lovely sunburst acoustic guitar hanging from the ceiling, and I just sort of fell in love with it. So I did a paper round delivering papers, and I saved up the money and bought the guitar. And then about once I started joining little groups, I had to have an electric guitar. So I had these catalogs funnily enough, called Bell's Catalogues. And there was about 30 guitars in there, all electric, all different prices, and so on and so on. And I sent away for one through the post to England. I was living in Belfast, and it came about 2 weeks later. It was beautiful, you know. It was a rapier 22, and it cost me 22 guineas.
Yeah,
and it was fabulous. And I played that for quite a while.
Yeah. In terms of the guitar styles, obviously Hank Marvin was a bit of an influence. Do you have any lessons at all?
No. Well, I had one lesson. In fact, I think everybody that plays guitar says this. My uncle realised I was getting interested in playing the guitar, so he booked me a lesson with this guy.
Yeah.
And I went up this particular night and met the guy, and he brought me into his parlour, and he had sheet music on a music stand and a Spanish guitar. And he kept pointing at these notes, you know, what's that, what's this? And I was just not interested in the slightest what he was doing. He wanted a classical guitarist, you know, which I loved listening to, but I didn't want to play it. And I had that one lesson, and I never went back.
Did you just sort of listen to records and then copy them?
Yes, I did. Yeah. Again, everybody was the same. That's all we had.
Yeah. Was
record players and records. The thing is that in those days the record players had a 3-speed sort of control on them, you know. And the best thing about it was that in those days, they're very hard to get now, but in those days, most record players, you could slow the record down, and the guy's playing his phrase on the guitar very fast, and then you slow down the record and get all the notes, and that's what we were all doing. You know, everybody was doing that.
Was that from 33 to 16?
Yeah, and the great thing about it was it was in the same key, except an octave lower.
Yeah.
So I think that's how most of us learned.
Yeah, well, I did that. As a guitarist myself, I did that. And I remember...
did you do that as well?
Yeah, and it was amazing because you actually... Not only did you learn it, but you actually learned the tricks, so to speak, that certain guitarists would use, which I thought was good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's loads of stuff. And then it just goes on and on. You know, it never stops. I'm still learning things on the guitar.
Are you?
Still, you know.
Do you still play most days?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you? Wow.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
It's what I do.
Yeah. Do you play with your amplifier plugged in, or do you just play acoustically?
Sort of both. I find when I play electric, especially through a small amp, you can get ideas. That's one thing I found about the guitar is you can learn so many things by making mistakes. You know, you sort of make a mistake, and wow, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
So I think the guitar is sort of built that way.
Obviously, you were playing in these bands at school. How soon was it when you formed Thin Lizzy?
Oh, years and years and years later. Oh, yeah. I mean, I was I sort of turned professional when I was around 17 with this horrible Irish show band, and we were based in Glasgow. So I lived in Glasgow for about a year and a half, and then it broke up. I came back to Belfast. Then I got another gig in Leeds, Headingley, with another dreadful Irish show band. And played with that for about a year and a half as well. Then I come home and played the blues at night, and I had to have a 9-to-5 job. And then I got an offer to go to Dublin, and there was a new show band being formed, quite sort of big time, and I got the gig, and so left Belfast again and moved to Dublin. And I stayed with that band called The Dreams. John Farrell and The Dreams, very good band. Great guys, great musicians. I stayed with them again for about a year and a half. I don't know what this year and a half thing is, but that's what happened.
Yeah.
And left that show band and then started walking around Dublin on my own at night, trying to find a bass player and drummer.
Yes.
And this went on for a while. And I thought, Jesus, what have I done? You know, I've left the show band that's paying me really good money, and so on and so on. And one night, I don't know how it happened, I just met Philip and Brian.
That's Phil Lynott and Brian Downey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we started talking, and we decided to have a rehearsal. We just met each other, so we decided to have a rehearsal about a week later. So we all turned up to this rehearsal room, and Eric Rickson as well was there. He was a keyboard player from Belfast. So Thin Lizzy was a four-piece at the very start with keyboards. So we started rehearsing, and we just realized there was something there. Like the chemistry was right. No one knew what it was, but we stayed together and we kept rehearsing.
Yeah.
And then we eventually started doing some gigs. We noticed that we were going down sort of very well everywhere we played.
Yeah.
And it just sort of slowly started taking off.
Must have felt great as it was taking off.
Absolutely, because we were just another group, you know, another Irish group, and there was hundreds of Irish groups, and they were all good. Most of them were all very good musicians. But I think one of the advantages we had was we started doing our own material, whereas everybody else was doing Deep Purple and Cream and the Stones and the Beatles, and we did all that as well. But we also put in some of our own songs.
Yeah,
and I think that made a difference, you know.
And how did you go about writing the songs? What was the process between the three of you?
Well, Philip would just turn up, either with an acoustic guitar or the bass. And he would say to me and Brian, I've got this idea for a song. Sometimes the song wasn't finished. He would only play a sort of a riff and one or two chords or whatever. But me and Brian always worked on Philip's songs. I mean, I put in riffs, I put in different chords, I put in this, that, and the other, and so did Brian. Brian played the drums more like a musical instrument than a sort of a metronome.
Yeah.
So we had this interest in working on the Philip songs. So that developed the band as more of an individual band. And you know, we put an awful lot of hard work into Philip's songs. So I think that's why this stood the test of time, the first three albums.
They have, haven't they? And what was it like when you went into record? Was that the first time you'd recorded? When you went with the first Thin Lizzy album?
No. The first time we recorded was in Dublin.
Yeah.
When we got offered, the guy that ran the studio in Dublin was a bit of a songwriter himself. So he got in touch with us and he said, if you record one of my songs, I will let you put one of your songs on the B side.
Oh, right.
So we said, yeah. So we went in. We hadn't a clue, no idea of a record studio at all. But we recorded an original song called The Farmer.
Oh, yes. Very, very sought after now, that song, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Yeah.
anyway, we recorded that and recorded the other guy's song. And probably about 300 copies was escaped.
Yeah.
It didn't make much of a buzz at the time. And that was it until we got an offer to go to London to record for Decca. We were only booked to go to London for about 9-10 days. Record the album in Decca Studios and then come home again, back to Dublin. And that's what we did. And then the second album, Shapes of Blue Orphanage. And then the third album came up, Vagabonds of the Western World. So around that time, we were also supposed to record a single for Decca. So to cut a very long story short, our manager heard us rehearsing one day, and we were just messing about. And at one point, Philip started singing Whisky in a Jar. So me and Brian started playing on it. This was in a rehearsal room. And our manager heard us and said, have you got an A-side for this single coming out for Decca? And we said, yeah, Black Boys in the Corner.
Yeah.
And he said, have you got a B-side? We sort of looked at each other. We're not really sure. He said, why don't you try Whiskey in a Jar? Which was like we left Ireland to get away from that music.
Yeah.
And now he wants us to record it. Anyway, we went in the studio, recorded Black Boys in the Corner, and then we just looked at each other, right, what are we going to do now? So our manager was still there, still saying, why don't you do Whiskey in a Jar? So myself and Phil went out with two acoustic guitars, Brian on the drums, and then Philip put on a vocal. And then I said, right, Eric, what are you going to put on the guitar? And I hadn't a clue what to do on this particular song. It took me about 5 weeks to come up with all the guitar parts.
The intro, as I said at the beginning of the show, is very haunting. It's an incredible original sound. It must, so you say, it's taken 5 weeks to get to that point.
Well, the intro came about after we did this gig one night in Wales.
Yeah.
And we had a long drive home to London. And I was sitting in the back seat with Brian Downey, and Philip was in the front. And he used to play these cassettes all the time in the car.
Yeah.
A particular one he put on this night was the Chieftains.
Oh, yeah.
So, we were all into this type of stuff as well, Chieftains and so on. And I just got this idea. Because I couldn't think of anything for the intro of Whiskey in a Jar, I thought, I don't think I'm going to get this together. We might as well leave the intro out. But this particular night, I was listening to Chieftains, and I got this idea of trying to copy the Uilleann pipes, the Irish pipes.
Oh, yeah.
That Paddy Maloney used to play in the Chieftains. And I got that type of slurring type notes from the pipes. And that's how I got the intro.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, it's a very distinctive intro that, you can be listening to the radio and you hear it on its own. Yeah, you think, oh, yeah, I know what's coming now.
The first note gets you.
Yeah, it does. Brilliant.
It's like a lot of sort of hits. You put on, that one the Beatles had, and Paul McCartney's bass is speaking back.
Yes.
And you hear it going,
yeah.
Yeah, so that, it's like, in fact, there is competitions now and again on the radio where they have a program and some of the program is, right, we're going to play this one note.
Yeah.
Can anybody guess what the song is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think most people will get that one.
Yeah, there is a certain sound to it, definitely. It took me a long time to grow to like it, you know. I think it was just us being blasé.
And were you using the Fender Stratocaster all the time with early Thin Lizzy?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. With a Marshall?
No, actually, I had... whenever we came to London, to actually live in London, and we left Ireland, one of our road managers... I was looking for an amplifier to get a certain sound that I couldn't get. So I'm trying all these different amplifiers. And one day the road manager walks in with this amplifier. It was like something from Doctor Who. It looked really weird. Yeah. And we all looked at it and, what the fuck's that, you know?
Yeah.
It was about 2 foot long and about 4 inches high, and it was an H&H transistor amp.
I remember those.
Yeah, so no valves in it. So I'm going, what the fuck's this?
Yeah.
And the guy said, you know, it's just out in England. It's a transistor. There's no valves. So I tried it, and I liked the tone of it, but the volume was non-existent. So I rigged it up with a Color Sound treble booster and a Watkins copycat echo chamber.
Oh, yeah.
Plus the H&H transistor amp. And I turned everything up full.
Yeah.
So I got this really pretty loud volume, but I like the tone.
Yeah.
So, so that's what I was using in the studio. For I think for all of the things I played was through the H&H amplifier.
That's interesting because it does sound on a lot of those records as though it's going through, you know, something like a Marshall with the overdrive and everything.
Oh yeah, it's you know, getting a Marshall with an overdrive sound. It's just that's what everybody went for, you know. These days, I find it a bit boring. It's been done so much, you know. It used to be incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
You know, when it first came out. You know,
yeah.
all fabulous, very exciting stuff. But like 40 years later, you know, or 50 years later, it doesn't sound quite the same. Like to me, anyway.
I've noticed on some of your recent videos, you don't have as much gain on, or it doesn't appear to be as it maybe used to be.
Yeah, I sort of I found the guitar is it can either play you or you can play it.
Yes.
If you know what I mean. Most people, like you go into a music shop anywhere in London, and you go in and there's a 16-year-old bloke sitting down, and he's playing through a sustain unit or distortion or a fudge box, and he sounds amazing. And he's only playing like the blues scale, which everybody plays. And it's like, God almighty, you know, have we not moved on a bit? I mean, that's the way I think about it. So I try to sort of, well, it's just self-expression, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Whisky in the Jar became a hit. How did it feel from sort of coming from Ireland, working with all the show bands, and then suddenly having a hit in the charts? How did it feel for you?
It was unbelievable. It was like Thin Lizzy. We were extremely lucky in certain things. I don't know how or why they happened, but they did. You know, we were at the right place, the right time. We looked the right way. Blah blah blah. But then whenever we went to London, people came down from record companies and agents came down and they watched us. And we were so nervous because we were in London that we nearly blew it. And they all said, I don't think too much of a disc group. You know, we heard people saying it.
Really?
Oh, yeah. You know, maybe our first album, Thin Lizzy, was released. So we had a little sort of wine and dine thing for agents and critics and all the rest of it. And they would come down, and you could tell by their body language and so on, they didn't think too much of us.
Oh, wow. That surprises me.
Well, that's what it was like. And actually, the first 3 albums that I'm on, you couldn't give them away. You know, when they were released, Philip especially would go out and buy the music papers that were out in those days, Melody Maker, Sounds, so on and so on. And now and again, we'd see a little review of our first album. Thin Lizzy, I really don't know what this band's all about. In fact, I don't think they know either. That type of stuff. And they slagged us because all of our songs were so different. So they wanted to put us in a pigeonhole. Like, what are you? Are you rock? Are you blues? Are you reggae? Are you what? What the fuck are you?
Yeah.
And they couldn't do that with us because each song was quite different. And that was one of the problems that we had for quite a while. But then when Whisky in the Jar took off, we were just completely bowled over. We couldn't believe it, that this had happened. We were in Germany at the time doing this horrible German tour. And we got a telegram from our management in England saying, congratulations, Whisky in the Jar's number 16 in the charts or something like this. And we just went, what?
Wow.
And then about 3 weeks later, we were on Top of the Pops, and we were like, it was like a dream, you know. Like, especially for an Irish group in those days, it was a big deal to be on Top of the Pops, you know. Not so much today, but in those days it was really, you were going somewhere.
So what was it like working with Phil?
Phil was very, very energetic, and he knew what he wanted. And he worked his bollocks off to get it. You know, people think that, you know, the songs come out of nowhere, and they don't. You know, it's hard work. And we put in the hard work. And when Thin Lizzy first started, myself and Philip got a house together.
Yeah.
In Dublin, and lived together in this house so that we could work on our music every day, which is what we did. You know, so...
Yeah. So there was a lot of graft put in before you made it.
Oh, absolutely.
And did you see Phil's sort of stage persona developing? Was it something he had to work on, or did it come naturally? How did it develop?
No, he had to work at it. He was quite shy at the start, which is hard to believe, but he was.
Yeah.
And he used to sort of hide behind the bass.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. But whenever we did the Slade tour, that's when the whole thing changed.
Yes.
Because, you know, like Slade went out and slayed the audience, and we went out and they just didn't want us, you know, at the time. And, you know, Philip started watching Noddy Holder, and that's where he got, that's when he started projecting his image, so to speak.
Yeah. After those 3 albums, you decided to move on and departed the band.
Yeah.
And what did you do after that? Because obviously you're doing your solo stuff now. And I mentioned earlier, and you played with Noel Redding.
Yeah. I played with a band called Main Squeeze, which is all ex-John Nell members. I was with them for but must have been, again, a year and a half for some strange unknown reason. But the band broke up because we were a complete blues band, and at that time, the clubs wanted people spitting at each other.
Oh, yeah.
The punk thing.
Yes.
We obviously weren't into. So we had a Main Squeeze. We usually worked in Europe, where they still liked blues. And we ended up working with Bo Diddley. And after the Noel Redding band, then I started forming my own little groups.
And that was the first time that you got into singing?
More or less. I started singing a little bit. Well, I was singing in the show bands I was in. Everybody in the show band had to sing nearly. Each took a turn to do their own particular song, and that was it. But I didn't really get into singing until until I started trying to write songs. So obviously I was going to sing my own songs. So that's what I do up till today.
The two albums I've heard are Exile and Standing at a Bus Stop. For any listeners that haven't heard your music, how would you describe those albums?
Again, self-expression. And, it's like anybody that writes songs, or, you could be standing looking out the kitchen window.
Yeah.
Trying a plate or a cup or something. And for some reason, this idea comes into your head. And some of them are nonsense, crap. And some of them are pretty good. So, again, it's down to this thing, can you be bothered? You know what I mean? It's like Keith Richards says that he's lying in bed. He's probably out of it as usual, but he's lying in bed asleep. And then he gets this idea, and he has a little tape recorder beside him on the bed. So, or else a pen and a piece of paper. So, I think that's the moment that decides it for you. Like, I've got this idea. Can I be bothered to get up out of this nice warm bed and put this down somewhere? And a lot of people can't be bothered. They let it go. And then when they wake up the next day, it's gone.
So do you follow a similar process? Do you have something by the side of your bed?
I do, but I think because you've actually got something there, it nearly works against you.
Oh, right.
Because you're expecting something. But the only time I ever experienced anything like that was when I was living in West Cork, and I woke up this particular morning, and I had this melody going through my head, and I said, right, I got my tape recorder.
Yeah.
I learned it on the guitar, and it was a song called Gotta Say Bye Bye. It's a sort of a jazz type thing. And I put it down on the tape, and most of it came pretty easy. And I kept thinking, where have I heard this before? That's another thing that you have to be careful about. Is, out of all the thousands of records you've ever heard in your life, they're all inside your subconscious, and you can probably pick one of them ideas, and think that it's yours. And then about 3 weeks later, you go, "Oh, for fuck's sake, that's off." Blah blah blah.
Yes. Yeah.
And that can happen very easy.
Yeah.
So. I just write whenever I get an idea, I sort of put it down, and I mightn't come back to it for months.
And do those ideas, are they both lyrical and musical?
You can get both. You can get the lyrics first, and somehow, again, with the guitar, which is a very strange instrument, really, I can be sitting with the guitar, and I've got rough lyrics for a song, but I've no music. So I start messing about on the guitar, and I could play this chord by mistake nearly, and it's not the chord I wanted, but I play it. I don't even know what the name of the chord would be, but it sounds the way I want for the lyrics. And so you start sort of a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
You get one piece and it fits into the other piece, but this part doesn't, and so on. And you just work at it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting process.
It is an interesting process. It's amazing, but I think what you have to have, obviously, is energy.
Yeah.
I think that's not that it all boils down to that, but if you haven't got the energy, you're going nowhere. That's what Philip Lynott. He had this energy.
Yes. Yeah.
That would take an idea that sometimes I played, and he heard me playing it on the guitar, and he would say, "Is that yours?" Meaning, is that my original idea? And I'd say yes. So we would go down to his bedroom with 2 acoustic guitars and start working on this idea. And Philip would keep at it, write lyrics, then tear the lyrics up, write other lyrics, and then I would change the chords, put in little riffs, and so on.
Yeah, it sounds like hard work, Eric.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
But I think anything worthwhile is hard work. But again, you can sort of enjoy the process. Enjoy the journey as well as the destination. You know what I mean?
That's so true, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, yeah. And like sometimes you look at the guitar or you look at your book of lyrics and you go, fuck's sake, and there's nothing happening at all. I think it's one of those things. It's even like discussing the guitar or people playing it. And I think you can over-discuss it and the magic disappears,
Yes. It's interesting that you mentioned that, Eric, because I've had quite a few authors on this show, and one of the things they say is if you're going to write a book, whether it's fiction or non-fiction, just write. Don't worry too much about the editing of it immediately. You can go back to that, but just get your ideas down.
Yeah, I got the idea for a book. I was one of the bands I had played in Sweden, and we got dropped off at the airport, and we found out that our plane home was delayed for about 2 hours. So I'm hanging about with the other 2 guys in the Swedish airport, and I sat down after numerous cups of coffee, and we had another hour or so to kill. And I thought, Jesus, my God, the amount of time that you waste in your life,
Yeah.
And I sort of rummaged through my case, and there was a book and a pen, and I just sat there and I said, right, and I started writing down memories of everything I could think of, no matter what it was, where it was, who it was. Just wrote it down in no order. Just as they come into my head, I wrote them down, and I thought, wow, I could write a book on this stuff,
Yeah.
So I came home and I started writing the book, and I got about halfway through it, and then that was it. I couldn't think anymore. There was nothing valid or this, that, and the other. So I stopped, and then this guy Andy Quinn, who is my manager, he asked me one day over the phone, "Are you writing a book?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I gave that up about 6 months ago." He says, "Why don't you finish it?" So I started writing it again, and there it was.
Yeah. So you found the first part quite easy, and then the second part was harder to get back into.
Yeah, because of the certain emotional aspect of it, and you know, it's part of your life that you're writing about, and sometimes it just brings you back to the original, the original time, and you're reliving it again.
Yes, I can imagine.
And sometimes it can be a bit emotional,
Yeah. And it's aptly titled Remembering.
Yeah, Remembering, yeah.
And that's available at all good bookshops and Amazon, I guess.
It's available at Amazon, and I'm not sure about the Great Waterstones.
Yeah.
I think you have to send them an arm and a leg with the book, I think. But
and I also noticed that there's an audio version of it with you narrating it.
I did, yeah. That was Andy Quinn's idea.
Yeah.
It's the book is. I don't know how many it's sold, but most of the time it gets a good mention. People write in to my Facebook or website. Really enjoyed the book. Thank you very much, and so on.
Yeah.
So I'm still waiting to hear what a load of crap.
Is there another book in you, do you think?
I sometimes wonder about that, because like when I read the book itself, obviously all these other ideas that I didn't put in the book suddenly started coming into my head. Why didn't I say this? So if I'm writing another book, it's going to be called It's All Lies.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you should say that, because I interviewed a chap called Reuben Archer.
Okay.
Who was in Stampede in the early 1980s, and he wrote a book, but he's just had a follow-up book with basically all the stuff he couldn't remember at the time. So it could be an idea. What sort of advice would you give someone who is thinking of entering the music industry these days, Eric?
Get another job.
Get another job, yeah.
No, I would just say to work as hard as you possibly can on what you're into. Now, regardless who tells you this, that, or the other, just ignore them, because you'll find years later that you know as much as they do.
That's good advice.
They put it across better.
Yeah.
I would just say to anyone getting into the music business is do what you want to do. Do what you want to do. It's your life. It's what you want to do. Do it. But you have to put the work in, and you're going to get tripped up. Everybody does. And you're going to go through some very hard times. Again, everybody does. But you if you stick with it, and you need a certain amount of luck, but I say if you stick with it, and you've got something, you've got something that you believe in, and it's yours. It's you. We're all individuals. That's what I think.
Yeah.
I can't play like him, but he can't play like me.
No.
It's a bit silly, the whole thing, in a way. I prefer to the two things that I sort of live by would be it's all self-expression.
Yeah.
I mean, playing the guitar to me is self-expression. That's all it is. And trying to communicate to the audience is the second thing for me that's very important.
Oh, is it? That's interesting. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, you can get some guys on stage who are fabulous players. You know, I've seen them. Really, really shit-hot guitar players or drummers or bass players or whatever it might be. And the audience just isn't taking any notice of them whatsoever. And then you get another guy that comes on, and he's probably not as good technically, or doesn't play as fast as the guy that was on before him, or this, that, and the other. But he communicates to the audience. And I think the more I play, I think that the audience, I think sometimes musicians tend to forget that there is an audience. They just go on and play. But there's an audience out there that's paid in.
I guess they can tell if you're playing authentically.
Yeah, I think that's what it's down to, is working hard at what you do.
Yeah.
And believing in what you do. And okay, folks, this is me. You know, this is me. I'm another individual, like all you people out there. We're all individuals. We've all got a little something that nobody else has. And to find that and to communicate that to the audience, I mean, that's why I do it. There's been some times in the past, definitely, when I've just had the wrong attitude. You can get the wrong attitude sometimes very easy about, you know, you think the audience is your enemy, you know, and they're all there with little notebooks going, oh, I didn't like that, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is a bit crazy way to think. I mean, that audience, you know, I liken it to, you know, someone going out to see a movie or to see a play, you know? And it's the same with a music audience. What I sort of think about is that person or those persons leave a warm house with beer in the fridge, all the DVDs you want to watch. They leave that, and they come out into the cold. They get into a cold car or a taxi or whatever it may be, and then they travel to the gig. Then they get out of the car or the taxi, and then they have to walk in the cold to the gig. Then they have to pay in, and then they have to come into the gig, and it could be either a freezing room, or not too warm, or a very, very loud band playing.
Yeah, and they've had to buy a drink.
And they have to buy overpriced drinks. And that's the way I look at it, and I think, right, for fuck's sake, give them something.
Yeah.
You know? That's what they're out for. And it's the same with me as a bloke around 15. I would come out of my house, I'd walk to the local cinema, freezing night. I'd go in, I'd pay my money. I'd wait till the feature film come on, which was absolutely crap. And I'd say, oh, fuck this. And I'd get up and walk out. A week later, I'd do the same thing, except this film was fabulous.
Yeah.
And I lost myself in the movie. I became part of the movie.
Yeah.
And then the movie finished, and I'd walk out home, but I'd feel lit up.
Yeah.
And that's the way I try and view an audience.
And do you still get the same buzz when you're on stage as you did all those years ago?
Definitely.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Absolutely. absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, I get more of a buzz.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I just feel that what I'm doing is what I've wanted to do all along. I sort of when I sort of I approach the guitar in a certain way, you know.
Yeah.
And sort of that's what I base the songs around, and so on and so on, is to project the guitar.
Yeah.
And it's just a whole thing, you know. I don't, excuse me, I don't use many effects. In fact, I use one pedal. And I try and get sounds out of the guitar. Whereas there could be a band on before me, and the guy's got like 12 pedals.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm going, what the fuck is that all about? You know? Because a lot of these guys, they've got these pedals, but they don't really use them as such.
Yeah. Well, I've got a Les Paul and a Strat, and I do find with the Strat, it's a bit more like a wild animal. It's got to be tamed a bit more, but you can get quite a lot of different sounds, whereas Les Paul, it tends to be one sound or another sound, if you know what I mean.
Sure. It depends, as far as, it depends what type of music you play.
Yeah.
I suppose the certain guitars seem to have more sympathy for certain types of music. You know, like for instance, like a jazz guitar player. You very rarely see a jazz guitar player playing a Fender Stratocaster. He would be playing a big, thick, semi-acoustic Gibson, you know, about 4 inches thick, 3 inches thick, with F holes on the side. You know, and that seems to be, well, all the great jazz players use them, so it must be, you know, Wes Montgomery, Joe Pass. You'd never see Joe Pass playing a Fender Stratocaster, you know. Or you would never see, I suppose, Hendrix playing a jazz guitar, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I find with the Stratocaster, you don't necessarily have to have as much gain on, and it works without too much gain on, whereas with a Les Paul, if you're playing rock, you really have got to whack it up.
Different animals.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
The Les Paul's more thick, sustain built into it. No. The Stratocaster's got down, and that's it. You know, this sort of clang. But yeah, it depends on the. It depends. I suppose it depends on the instrument that you've chosen, and can you express yourself the way you want, well, as close as you want through it. You know, there's some guitars I've played, and they were nice guitars, but they didn't feel right.
No.
You know.
Have you played Telecasters?
Not that much. No, I played before Thin Lizzy. I played a Gibson 330.
Oh yeah.
Which was beautiful. Beautiful guitar, and I played blues with that, with a band and a blues group in Belfast called Shades of Blue, and it was excellent, you know. But I always fancied a Stratocaster as well, but couldn't afford both. So I eventually got the Stratocaster, and it really threw me for a while because the stuff I played on the Gibson was quite easy. And then I tried to play it in the Stratocaster, and I went, God almighty. It was like hard work. It really was. It took me quite a while to adapt from the 3:30 to the finished Stratocaster.
Yes. So you've got a mini tour coming up with more dates to come. What other projects do you have coming up, Eric?
I formed this trio, as I said, this latest one about 10 weeks ago, and ended up the bass player and the drummer both got us 3 gigs in Belfast. So we did our very first gig in Belfast about 6 weeks ago, and it was amazing. I couldn't believe the crowd that was in. It was really stuffed. And then the next gig we had was in Belfast about 2 weeks later, and I got the fucking cold.
Oh.
So I had to cancel it.
Yeah.
So our next gig is in 2 days, this Sunday.
Yeah.
This will be our 3rd gig. And after that, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I'm definitely up for playing gigs.
Yes.
But it's trying, depends on what agency you end up with and
yeah,
this, that, and the other.
Do you have any more new material for another album?
I have, yes.
Fantastic.
I wanted to do another album, but our friend the guitarist came along.
Ah. Yeah.
And that was that.
Yeah.
So, like, 2 years later, you're starting to think about doing something that you wanted to do 2 years ago. Yeah, I've got songs. Again, all very varied. That don't. There's no. It's not all a blues album or a this or that or the other. It's just each song is just its own thing.
Where can people reach you? I guess on the on your website, the Facebook page.
Yeah, Facebook, definitely.
Eric, thanks ever so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, God.
And I'll put all the links on the show notes for everybody so they can have a look at some more of your work.
All right, Matt. All the best,
yeah.
man.
Cheers then. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You have been listening to Undercurrent Stories. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please feel free to share the show link to your friends and family, and if you have 60 seconds, I will be most grateful if you would please rate and review. To hear more episodes, please subscribe to the show and visit undercurrentstories.com. If you leave your email in the link, we will notify you as soon as new episodes are released. Also, check out our social media links, details of which can be found on the show notes. Until next time, this is Bob Wells wishing you all the very best.